I'm Kirsty, and I'm coming to you from Rzeszów in Poland, where I live with my husband and my 2 children, and I've been here for 9 months. So still learning Polish, still learning the language, still finding out knitting culture in Poland. But I started a podcast so that I can get to know people around the world who like to knit and who like to follow other people's knitting progress. I don't have a knitting group here at the moment. I'm hoping to start one, and that's kind of in the process as I teach people and help people and teach people to knit and get to know people who already knit. But at the moment, this is my knitting community and I guess my knitting group. So thank you for coming. If you are new and this is the first time you've stumbled across my podcast, welcome. I hope you enjoy looking at the projects that I'm working on in the podcast, and if you're returning, thanks so much. It's so good to see you again. Today I have tea like usual. This is in my Polish pottery mug that I got at Christmas time from the Christmas markets in Krakow. So yeah, the tea that I'm drinking, it is a black tea. This is the box that it comes in. I got it from Lidl. So it's czarna z kawałkami suszonych owoców, something like that. Like I said, I'm still learning Polish, so I can read, but not brilliantly. So if you're English or not a Polish speaker, you go, wow. If you're a Polish speaker, you go, oh, sorry. Anyway, but I'm getting there. So, welcome. I've said that. You can find me on Instagram and on Ravelry as Kirsty Knits and Sews. I'll put that down here. Yeah, so let's jump in. I have 2 finished objects today, and I have worked on every single one but one of my whips since the last podcast. Yeah, so a lot to go through today. 2 of them I wasn't going to show you, but then I realised that I had actually got more done on them than I thought, and so I am going to show you them as well. And I've also had 1 new cast on, which I have also finished since the last podcast. So let's do finishes first. The first one, finished objects first. The first one you have seen before, and these are now finished. They are what I've been calling the opal socks. They're not matching. Obviously the yarn is matching, but the actual socks are not matching. You can see the cuffs are different, the lines are at a slightly different point, but I don't mind. I think they're fun, and they are for my husband, who will also not care that the lines don't match up perfectly. I don't usually make my socks match perfectly. Occasionally I'll want to, but if it's a self-strapping yarn, I'd rather have a larger chunk at the end to use in scrappy socks or a scrappy project than have that extra bit lined up and have 2 littler bits that I then can use in scrappy projects. I would still use both bits, don't get me wrong. So a bit of a closer up look. This is the sock. It's a 2x2 ribbed cuff. I follow Kay Litton of the Crazy Sock Ladies vanilla sock pattern on Magic Loop. Vanilla socks on Magic Loop pattern, which I should say, all of my Ravelry project pages will be linked below. So if there's a pattern or something that I've showed you that you want to either find the pattern for or find out more information, if you click on that link, it'll take you to my Ravelry page and you can see all the information about that project. If there's something missing, just comment, ask me a question, and I'll do my best to answer. I do modify things, and I don't always add them to Ravelry pages because I do it so often and I do it on the fly and I forget to update. So if there's a question, just ask. But yeah, so this is, I believe, a 16 row cuff, slip stitch, heel flap and gusset, and it is for my husband who has like size 11 or 12 feet, so it's actually too big for this blocker. I have a larger blocker, but it's not that much larger. but I do have a larger blocker. I just grabbed the wrong ones. I think I did a 50 stitch leg, which I don't normally do. I normally do a 40 row leg or less. I like shorties myself, and I'm trying to get myself some longer ones for winter. But these are for my husband, and he'll wear them in winter, and so I wanted him to be able to wear them over his or under his thick winter boots. And so I did the longer leg, and I did them on Addy sock needles. So they are not 9-inch circular, they're slightly longer, but they don't have a particular inch measurement on the packet. But the two needles are slightly different lengths. So one is shorter that you work off, and the one that you're working with or onto is a longer needle. So it's something like that length. And what that means is that you have something bigger to hold than what a 9-inch circular's needle would be to actually manoeuvre, but you still have the point that you can work off. And so I found them quite fun. Another reason I did the longer leg is because I just kept working and was like, oh, that's longer than I'd normally do, but I was having fun, so I kept going. So I still have a fair amount of the yarn left for scrappy projects. But yeah, that's it. So yeah, it's a 2x2 rib, which is different to the pattern. Leg length is the same as the pattern. Everything else is the same as the pattern. With sock needles, I did have to move on to, I did magic loop for the toe. You could use DPN or something else. But yeah, so they are done. I am going to put them away for Father's Day. Australian Father's Day is the first Sunday in September. So coming up soon, we'll actually be on holidays for Father's Day, which I hadn't thought of until just then. So I'm going to have to figure out what to do for that to make it a special thing. But there you go. One pair done as a gift. And this is the first pair of socks I have ever actually made for my husband. So there you go. I've only been really sock knitting for a year, so that's not crazy, it's just crazy. What else is important? These are being entered into Summer Sock Camp by the Crazy Sock Lady. It finishes on the 31st of August, so I haven't entered them yet, but I need to update Ravelry and then enter them. By the time this podcast goes up, I am sure they will be entered. Yeah, so they're done. Woohoo! And that'll be in the wildcard cabin because they were done on Addy sock needles, which there's not a separate cabin for. Summer Sock Camp, just really quick. It's basically 3 months over summer for the Northern Hemisphere it's for the whole world, but it's Northern Hemisphere's summer, that you knit socks, and you can enter them into the Summer Sock Camp by Kay Litton on Ravelry, and you can use the hashtag on Instagram, and I believe she pulls prizes from both of those. But on Ravelry there are different cabins, so there's Magic Loop, DPN, 9-inch circular, and Wildcard. So whatever you use as the majority of knitting that pair of socks, you can enter it into that cabin, and then there are prizes for each cabin. Magic Loop is by far the most popular cabin, but it's also a great way to try out new things. So I'd never tried. Actually, I should say this was my first pair of socks using Addy's sock needle, and I quite enjoyed it. I found it easier to use than 9-inch circulars. 9-inch circular, I'm still getting the hang of for English style knitting. I can knit 9-inch circulars on continental style knitting without a problem if it's knitting. If it's purling, I'm still learning. So we'll get to that in a bit. The second finished object, which you have not seen at all. This was not even a concept in my mind last podcast, but it happened. My son is 3, and every time I knit, he says, "Who's that for? Is that for me?" Every time. And even if it's a project that he's seen me work on before, he still wants to know who it's for and if it's for him. And I haven't knit him something for a while, I've knit him a lot of jumpers in the past. I've never knit him socks before. Like I've knit him a lot of things and I've sewn him a lot of things. A lot of things. He's probably the one I've made clothes for most. But he keeps asking, and so I had to make him something. So I had seen Summerlee Knits feet teeth socks is what they're called, and I loved them. And so when I started thinking of making scrappy socks for my son, of course I thought of Summerlee Knits teeth feet socks, and I bought the pattern and I made him some socks, and they took 3 days. He's 3 years old. His feet are large for a 3-year-old, but he's still young. So they were very quick to knit out. And this is them. So you can see, I will explain in a minute as I go. So this is the pattern. She uses a brighter red, but I just used what I had in Stash and Scraps. The purple and green is from Vera Yarns. Yeah, Vera Yarns. Oh, I should say any makers that I mention, places you can buy. Patterns will all be linked through Ravelry, but any yarn supplies, things like that, I will link down below. And so yeah, it's all scraps, the black, the green, the pink, the teeth. The teeth actually came from Black Wattle Yarns in Canberra, Australia. But yeah, the ones at the top are Vera Yarn designs from her minis sets. So that's the sock on the side. I love the little green heel. The sock actually had the main colour as the heel as well, which also would have been really cute, but I ran out. Enter the second sock. I didn't weigh them before I started. I had used some purple on a different pair of socks, scrappy socks for me, and I only had a 20 gram mini to start with. So I don't actually know how much I had. I mean, I could guesstimate. I probably had about, I don't know, maybe 15, 17 grams. I think I had 7 when I started the second sock. And so I was like, oh, that's going to be tight. They are small socks. I did the size small in the pattern because I cast on the kid's size and I just thought they weren't going to be big enough. And I'm glad I went the small. I haven't tried them on him with the heel. He tried them on before I put the heel in. Yeah, but I wasn't sure. But the other thing about the pattern that I found weird, and I haven't contacted Summerlee about it or anything like that, but in the requirements for the pattern, it specifies you need a 2.75mm needle for this sock, but in the pattern itself, it says, when it says cast on, it says use a 2.25mm, and it doesn't say to change. So I did these with 2.25mm, and because it's colour work all over, it's not as stretchy as other socks, which is why I presume it's meant to be 2.75. But I don't have a 2.75, and instead of meeting in the middle and doing a 2.5, I stuck with the 2.25 and went up a size, and it's fine. But because I then ran out of purple, I did as much as I could. I literally had about this much left from my last round, and then I just started the teeth. And so what will happen is when my son is wearing them, he's just going to have monsters of different sizes. Yeah. So the other funny thing about these is I had, for the first sock, finished all of this colour work, done the teeth, done the toe, had sewn one eye, was sewing the second eye, and was about to kitchen the toe when he said he didn't want eyes or teeth. He was okay with the red foot, the toe, but he didn't want eyes or teeth. Now, my son has previously had nightmares from things like Monsters Inc. and stuff, so if he needed me to frog it, I would have frogged it. But I also know that my son, he doesn't want to go back on his word. So when I saw that, I was like, I'm going to show him the pattern and just see. So I showed him the pattern and I pointed out how all the socks had the eyes and the teeth and how it was a really cute thing to have. And he said, I don't want eyes or teeth. And I said, okay. And so I pulled out like most of the second eye. And then he stops and goes, I want eyes and teeth now. And this is something we're noticing more and more with him, is if he has changed his mind, he won't change his mind straight away, or he won't tell you he's changed it straight away, but he needs an out so that he's not going back on his word. So he's being consistent. And so if you say, do you want to do this? And he says no, then you can say, well, do you think you'll want to do that soon? He'll say yes. And then he might wait a minute and then do it. And it's just a way that he deals with changing his mind without going back on his word, or, yeah. So it can be very frustrating, but now we've figured it out, it is a bit easier. So anyway, we did that. I haven't shown him the second sock completed. I haven't tried them on because I figured if I let him try them on, he would have worn them to preschool today and you wouldn't have seen them. So I will give them to him tonight. How cute are they? So yeah, these took me an entirety of 3 days and used, let me just double check, 34 grams of yarn. 34 grams. Tiny little socks. So these will also count towards the summer sock camp tally. I believe the grey ones will be number 6 and these will be number 7 that I've made in the last 3 months. I don't know that I'll get any others finished. It's not a priority and it finishes in a week. So maybe, but I doubt it. But yeah, pair number 7. There you go. I did them on, like I said, 2.25mm and I did Chalgu red lace circular. That's what they look like in the box, in the packet. And it was all scrap yarn except the red one, which is a Patton's Pattonal Merino 4-ply that I picked up, I believe, from Spotlight Australia. Yeah, so there you go. They are my 2 finished objects. Hi, this is Kirsty from the future just popping back in because I just found out that the Maggie pullover by Renata of Comfort Zone Knits is live. That is the sweater that I'm currently modelling for you. This is Speed My kind of secret knitting. You guys have seen it as it was going. Sorry, my collar is poking out there. But this is the finished sweater. Now, I absolutely love this sweater. I did it with a little bit less positive ease than the pattern recommended. I got gauge. It has this beautiful lacework motif that is inspired by daisies. It's leaves coming up and then this is the flowers up the top and you've got that double repeat there. It is stunning. This is fingering weight held double. So one is Slate by Vera Yarn Designs and the second is Mohair Kid Silk by Drops. And it has just made this beautiful, I mean, it's too hot to be wearing it today, but this beautiful, fuzzy, warm, comfortable drapey fabric. Now, I don't really know what else to tell you because I didn't have this planned, but I did want to jump on and show you my sweaters because A, I can now, but B, Renata of Comfort Zone Knits has 25% off all of her patterns right now to celebrate the launch of this sweater. So I wanted you to know about that and the discount for this sweater as well as the rest of her patterns while it was still on. And like I have said or will said, I'm not sure I'm going to insert this clip, I'm going away for a month, or I won't be podcasting for about a month. So I wanted you to know about that now while it's live. So if you're interested in making this sweater, like I said, the construction is new to what I did. You actually cast on kind of here, so above the split for the sleeves with a provisional cast on, you knit it top up, then you pick up those stitches, knit down, split for the sleeves, and then you're doing the rest top down. It does have two options for the puff sleeves like you see here, or straight sleeves, and shaping or non-shaping for the body. This one does not have shaping. I just did it with a little less positive ease than recommended in the pattern. So I think this is a size 2. I'm currently about a 38-inch bust, and I did a size 2, which actually is the 3rd size in the pattern that has a 0, 1, 2. But yeah, it's available in English and in Polish. If you're interested, go check it out. I would say it's more of an intermediate pattern because of the provisional cast on and a few of the other steps in it, but it is a great pattern. Like, I enjoyed knitting it, and I've done twice. So this is my second one that I did according to the pattern as it is currently written. I haven't mentioned this yet, so that's all for finished objects. I am going to go into a stash. I'm going to start in my podcast doing like a stash. I want to say stash down, but it's not quite accurate. But like a accountability maybe, like a stash tracking maybe. Tracking my stash, which I've been doing since January, but I haven't been sharing it on my podcast so far. So I will share at the end of WIPs where I'm at today, and then the first podcast every month I will share how I went the last month. I have a lot of stash, but it's one of those things. I don't have as much as a lot of people. Like, this here is just a few of my sock skeins. I have quite a few sweater quantities waiting to be knit up. Sometimes the reason they're not is because I don't have a pattern yet, and sometimes the reason that they're not knit is because actually the yarn is not as nice as I was expecting when I bought it. And so I'm like, I'm not sure I want to make a pattern or what that looks like. Make a sweater with yarn that I don't love, because that's a lot of work to put in. So anyway, that's all in the... I'll talk about that a bit more, but I just wanted to give you a heads up because I love numbers, I love maths, I love stash things. And I did start this year not really thinking stash down, because at the beginning of the year I still had a lot, but I didn't consider it a lot. I don't know. Anyway, I've been tracking, I've been working, I've been using. I will go into that at the end. So, now, in terms of projects, WIPs, I don't have any more finished objects, but this next one is close. This one is my oldest WIP. Let me get the front of it. I'm not going to be able to hold up. Oh, it's actually not bad. Oh, and I can even see. You can see the top is flopping over because it's not joined together. They're just individual things. But that is the progress that I've made on this blanket. Oh, I just saw a problem. Can you see the problem? I see the problem. I did notice that I had one extra square and I didn't do anything about it, and so now I have to decide if I go back and fix it or not. Anyway, so this is it. What I'm doing, pattern. I don't have a pattern. It came out of a Granny Squared book that I no longer have, so I can't give you any pattern details, but it was just a Granny Square, and so colours and placement and layout and everything is all me. The yarn, I'm using Bendigo Woolen Mills Luxury 8-ply in 3 colours. I have Frost, I have Aquamarine, sorry, Frost is colour 312, shade 312, Aquamarine is 324, and Coastal Blue is 312. So the whole blanket is with these 3, and I have done it all on a US 7 4.5mm crochet hook, which it's a Susan Bates crochet hook, if that means anything to anyone. I tend to just buy them either in bulk online like on eBay type things cheap, or if I need a specific size, I just go into a shop and buy whatever type they have at the time. So Susan Bates, I can't tell you any more information. So this was originally meant to be a baby blanket for my 3-year-old son. So not a baby blanket for him. He may yet get it, or I'll put it aside for another baby. The mistake is this one here. You can see it is blue on the outside like it's meant to be, but it's meant to be white on the inside and then green. And instead it's green on the inside and then white. Which means that it actually matches these blocks here, except for the outside border, not this block here. So, I may or may not change it. It is noticeable, but I don't know, we'll see. At the moment, it's only 2 rows, 2 small rows that have to cut and redo. Yeah. So to join these, I am whip stitching. So if you're not familiar, I just put 2 together, right side facing, and then in every, let's move forward and see if I can show you. So right side facing, and then in every stitch, I go into the top loop, so the back loop, the outside loop of that one, and then the top loop of this one, the outside loop of that one, and sew them together. And so when you then open it, you have the front loop of each one, and then just a little, you can see it better here. You can see I join it with the blue, and so you've still got the little whip stitch here of the blue, but you get the beautiful edges for both edges. I'm not following a tutorial, I'm just whip stitching. I do a lot of paper piecing with hexies, which is also a whip stitch the way I do that. So it seems very natural to me to do that. And I did one and I liked the way it joined, so I keep going. I am doing, if it's white joining to white or aquamarine joining to aquamarine, I'm using the colour thread, like the white or the aquamarine respectively. But everything else, whether it's the dark blue joining to the white or the dark blue joining to the aquamarine, I'm using the dark blue because I prefer to have the dark blue infringe on the white than the other way around. And so when I get to a, wow, this is hard to show you. So I'll whip stitch between the two, and then I'll join them at the corners, and then I'll whip stitch between the two, and I just do a little, like, sew it through itself at every corner to make sure that that's secure, because otherwise it can pull up and down if you use one long thread. But because I'm changing colour, I also have extra security spots. So that's that one. It is getting close to being finished. I just need to change out that square if I choose to, and then update the, change out the square, do the other way, and then sew in a bunch of ends. So that probably won't be done by the next podcast because I'm going away. I'll talk about that in a little bit. But we'll see. That's had more progress in the last month than it's seen in the last 2 years. So we'll get there. Okay, so that's that one. My next one is one that has actually had, it's a half finished object, which is very exciting. And I didn't even think to put them on the blockers, so just excuse me a second while I grab a blocker. These ones, I call them my turtle reef socks because the yarn is by Maximoo Yarns in his Sea Turtle Reef colourway, which I absolutely love. Isn't that yarn gorgeous? Just look at like the reds, the burnt colours in there. Oh, I love it. This is like, I love this yarn. This is what it looks like in the ball. Yes, I hand wound it because I did not have a ball winder when I was winding this ball. So I have a half finished object. This one is my continental project. So this is the one that I am practicing my continental knitting, or Norwegian knitting, I think is technically the way that I hold my yarn now, to tension. I absolutely love it. The pattern is the Crazy Sock Lady vanilla sock on magic loop that I've just adjusted for a 9-inch circular. She does have a 9-inch circular specific pattern, but the actual pattern is the same. It's just where you're putting markers that changes. So instead of buying another pattern, I just make the adjustments myself. And like I said, I'm doing them on 9-inch circulars. I've started the second cuff. I'm finding it super annoying because, like I said, I'm not great at purling yet, and I've changed the way that I purl, and I feel like the tension is quite different for the second cuff because of all the changes that I've been making. This one I started, do I have a date? I started sometime last year, like August, September, maybe June or July, sometime last year. It's about a year old. So yeah, the tensioning is different. I think in the future, if I'm doing 9-inch circulars, I'll probably do the cuff on magic loop because I enjoy continental knitting on 9-inch circulars. I do not enjoy purling on 9-inch circulars. That's just where we're at. And even I find it awkward to do English knitting with 9-inch circulars. So that's that. I don't know there's much else to say about this sock. It's a sock. It may have a 16-inch 2x2 cuff instead of the 16 row 2x2 cuff instead of the 20 row cuff in the pattern, and the cuff is also not a 2x2 in the pattern. But other than that, it's following the pattern. So that's where that is. I am getting there, and I have actually been reaching for it a lot until I got up to the cuff. So I think I've got another 5 rows or something to do on the cuff, and then it will be up to vanilla knitting again. So that'll be exciting. So that's that one. The next one that I've also got some work done on that you haven't seen for a long time. But I told you when I changed colours I would show you again. And I changed colours. Is my Bits and Bobs blanket. Now, it is wide, it's on circular needles, so I'm not going to be able to hold it out, but that will give you an idea. Now, this is using fingering weight scraps held double with Easy K Merino 100% wool in the cool grey colour number 4. It's, what do I have to say? The yarn itself, I bought for a sweater, but what I decided was the wrong colour for me. And so I had it anyway. It is more expensive than I would normally buy for a blanket. But it is 100% wool, and I'm going to have to buy some more to finish up the blanket or I will run out. But everything else is 100% scraps. I am just using up everything that I have left, so you can see there's obviously a lot of grey and more green than other things. Some of the ones down here are just a row or two, or this one here is like 10 stitches, this little row here. I'm just using everything up that I have, and I went through my stash and picked up a few more that were probably more on par with the amounts of these 3. Obviously these ones were very small amounts, but I also have some that are more small amounts. And so I'm just holding double. I'm following the Bits and Bobs blanket by K.F. Jones. I think I cast like 10 stitches more than what her pattern called for, but other than that I'm following the pattern exactly. And I'm loving it. It's an easy knit. The other day it's very hot at the moment, thus I'm not wearing any hand knit things. But the other day we had rain and it was a cool morning, the first cool morning in a while, and I messaged my friend Sarah, who's in Poland, and I said, it's blanket knitting time. It's a blanket knitting weather. And I pulled out this to work on. And she messaged me back saying, I'm already knitting my blanket. And so we had a distance blanket knitting party. So yeah, I really love this one. I'm loving working on it. It is a relaxing one to knit on. And I love adding colours and seeing how it changes. So yeah. Alright, my next one is my Twisty Staircase Christmas socks. This is using wool from hobby.pl, but hobby is worldwide, so HOBBI. I'm not a huge fan of this yarn. I think I've said that before. It is sparkly, which I love. I love the colours. It's just not as soft as I would like, and the sparkle splits off very easily, so I've got to actually pay attention. Definitely using my lace needles, I've got to pay attention for splitting yarn. So it's 73% superwash wool, 25% polyamide and 2% polyester. And it is their Christmas sock wool glitter. However, I have continued using it. I'm doing the Twisty Staircase sock pattern by Dana Ray Knits, and you can see the pattern there. Oh yay, you can actually see the pattern coming through. It's very hard to see on the dark red, so I was a bit sad at that point, but you can see it coming through on the green, and it'll be on the top of the foot as well, so there'll be more chance to see the pattern. But I've done the heel flap and gusset. Now, to be fair, I'm following the pattern by Dana Ray Knits for the texture of the pattern, but I didn't even stop to check if it was a heel stitch flap and gusset, and if it was, her instructions for it. I just went straight back to vanilla socks on Magic Loop heel flap and gusset by the Crazy Sock Lady. So if you want to do this pattern and you get there and go, that's not a heel stitch flap and gusset, slip stitch heel flap and gusset, sorry, I just went with what I knew. I think I was annoyed enough at the yarn that by the time I got to that point, I just wanted to do something that I knew and knew well. So I picked up the gusset stitches this morning and I'm ready to decrease for the foot. I am happy to be getting this one done. This will be in my Christmas stocking. Not a surprise for me, but very exciting to have Christmas hand knit socks. I might have to do some warm woolly ones as well in DK weight, because Christmas here will be cold. And then the next pair of socks, which I showed last week, saying I tried to do a heel without following the instructions and that was a terrible idea. I then won S.Knits has a new collection of sock patterns coming out called 7 Days of Plain Socks, I believe. I'll link her down below, or I'll link her pattern down below. But she did a giveaway on Instagram and I won, so I got all 7 patterns. So they're called Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday socks. But as a collection, 7 Days of Plain Socks. And it is great. Like, I went through, because I was like, I want a sock, a heel that I'm not familiar with. And I just went through and had a look, and she has, I don't know if it's 4 or 3, split which way, but she has toe-up socks, she has cuff-down socks, she has heel flap and gussets, she has short row heels, she has something called a strong heel that I've never even heard of. But each sock has a different construction. So it's not that you have the same sock construction with different colour work. It's actually the pattern that you're buying is for the construction of the sock. which I thought was brilliant. It's kind of a one-stop shop for trying to figure out your perfect sock. So I went through and I just looked for a heel down one because I was already doing this heel down, cuff down, and I looked for a heel that I was willing to do, and I found a German short row heel in a cuff down sock. So that's what I did. I am looking forward to going back and actually making all of the socks so I can try all the different construction methods. I generally do cuff down, but I am willing to do toe up and try that one as well. But here we go. So this is what I have done. So the leg is the same as last time, but I now have a heel that is big enough to actually wear. Yay! Let me do that. Woohoo! Very excited. And I didn't have to pick up any gusset stitches because it's a German short row heel. Yay! This is yarn hand dyed by me. It is actually, they're both sock blanks. 2 sock blanks. This is the one that I'm using for the body. I just grabbed a paintbrush. I actually did most of it with the powder, not actually watered down dye. So I just did some rough flowers. I knew that it would be knitting up in a weird way, so I didn't bother too much about stuff. It was just a bit of fun. And then this one, I ice dyed in the oven. So I absolutely love this, and I love how it's working out for the heel, and I will possibly use it for toes as well, but I also want to knit an entire sock out of this one for me. A pair of socks, sorry, out of this one for me. So I don't want to use up too much of it in this pair of socks. But I do love how the colours coordinate. And part of that is just that I actually don't have that many dye colours. So when I am using colours, it's the same dyes. But it does mean that generally my socks coordinate, or my hand-dyed yarn coordinates reasonably well. So what do you need to know? It's a 60 stitch leg. I've been trying to figure out my perfect sock size, and I think for vanilla knitting it'll be 60 inches on 2.5 millimeter. 2.25 would be 64 stitches, but most socks I prefer the fabric of a 2.5 millimeter. So that's what I do. So this is 2.5 millimeter on Addy circular needles, and 60 stitch with a 2x2 ribbing for, I believe, 20 rounds on the cuff. So I will link it as in Reverie, I'll link it as the 7 days of plain socks, or whatever day that it was actually using. But it's kind of a amalgamation of different things, that sock. But it's exciting because I haven't had socks up to vanilla knitting for a while. And so my easy projects have been swapping between different things. This one was one of my easy go-to projects for a while, but when I go on a bus or I go out, I haven't really had something I can just grab and take easily, which is partly why the continental socks have been done, because I could take them for a while. But I'm excited because now on both my socks that I just showed you, they're up to an easier point, and my continental ones will be very soon. Oh, socks back in the works. Alright, so part of the thing of not having socks up to a point of easy knitting means that I have got a lot more progress done on other projects. I knit in the morning for an hour before the kids get up. My son is usually awake, but he has to stay in his room so that I have some quiet time and he has some quiet time. And this is just a way that we have worked out so he doesn't wake us up and wake his baby sister up way too early every morning. So it's working for us, but I do it as I listen to the Bible and as I listen to other audiobooks. I knit. So I want something that is kind of the mindless knitting, not concentrate knitting, so I can focus on what I'm hearing. And so I've been getting a lot of progress done on mindless knitting projects. Now this next one you may not think of as a mindless knitting project, but it becomes one. and that is my sea glass sweater. I love this. You know what? I can even put it on for you. It is hot today, so I'm not going to keep it on, but I can put it on for you because I have bound off the bottom. Let me see. So there you go. That is my sea glass sweater. It is, I believe, 4 inches shorter than what the pattern suggests. And I think I probably did a little bit lower, like I probably did a couple of rows more on the yoke than I should have. But that's it so far. I really, really, really love it. I love it. I'm glad I went with the blue for the colour, the contrast colour. I'm going to take it off, it is too hot. It is scrappy. Hang on. There we go. It is scrappy. I did end up going with the magic knots for the back. I think I mentioned previously I wasn't sure what I was going to do. And so you do get this line down the top half of the back, and then under the sleeve it goes down there when you get to that. And it also means there'll be a line underneath both sleeves. I did it that way because I thought if I could have it reversible, that would be fun, because the inside is also super fun and happy and scrappy. But I have lined them up too well, so you can still see this, like the actual knots coming out inside. I think the plan, like the pattern, when they say do magic knots, is they expect the magic knots to not line up. So you'll have a section of fabric where you might have the same colour twice, or you know, you'll be short a couple of stitches, or like have them actually kind of go in different sections. But I figured out how to get them in a specific spot, I guess. And so that's what I've done. So I have a very definite line, and the colours definitely change at the same time, but it means I do end up with, like, you can see that little pool of stuff. I don't mind. I'm going to wear it. When I asked my husband about it, he said it's a very you jumper, which means he doesn't really like it. But once I wear it a few times and we have good memories, whatever, he'll probably come around to it. He usually does. So yeah, that's it. I'm doing size 5 from whatever the pattern was, and it should give me, I think, 6 inches positive ease. I'm not sure how I'm going with gauge with the actual thing. I did gauge swatch, and so I'm using a 5.5mm needle instead of the 5mm the pattern calls for, because I was too tight with gauge. But I actually don't know if I've kept a consistent gauge, because I'm not an experienced colourwork knitter to this extent. I've done colourwork yokes before and they've worked out fine, but I've never done a full colourwork jumper. And so I've noticed that my gauge is changing slightly, and also the weather. On hotter days it's tighter and all that good stuff. So it is what it is. But I do love it. And because I had 6 inches positive ease, if it is tighter, it'll still fit and be fine. And if it's looser, so be it. I have done it, I said 4 inches shorter than the pattern called for. And it will grow. I expect it to grow a bit. But I have kind of aimed for more of a cropped look. I have a lot of longer sweaters, and when I tried this on at that cropped stage, I loved it. And so I just went, I'm going to stop. And when it grows, it will grow to whatever it is, and I'll love it again. But that's okay. So I started this one, oh gosh, I started this on the 1st of August. I haven't touched it for about a week, so that means, like, that took me about 2 weeks. 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks maybe. I hit a groove and I went with it. And it did become my mindless knitting. So I was getting a couple of hours, usually an hour in the morning, knitting on that. And then a bit more as I kept going throughout the day. But it was one that I couldn't do with my daughter around. My son was fine, my daughter, nope. So it was an early morning and a late night kind of knit, but I clearly loved it. The reason it's paused where it is, I'm up to the sleeves, and there are two things. One is I don't really want to do magic loop sleeves. I may end up doing it, but I don't really want to. But also I want to be able to knit the sleeves in tandem, because I know that Sleeve Island is one that people get caught on with this one a lot, because you're changing every colour, like every, I don't know, 50 or 60 stitches or something. That's not from the pattern, I'm just guesstimating. And so when you're doing the body and it's every, 200, 300, 400 stitches, you get into a group. But when you're stopping every 50 stitches to change colours, it gets to be a slog. So I am expecting that I will hit that at some point, but I also would like to have my sleeves matching as much as possible. And so I thought if I can get 2 sets of needles, then I can actually knit a couple of rows on one and a couple of rows on the other, and have them go at the same speed, and then already know what colours and yarns I've used, rather than having to go back and try and figure it out. And I'll try and make them match the body as much as possible as well. I don't need to, but I have the yarn, so why not? So yeah, I'll try and do that. I'll see how it goes. I have ordered some DPNs, 5.5mm DPNs, that should be arriving this afternoon. So I'll probably pick up the stitches on Magic Loop and then knit onto DPNs from that point. But we'll see. I haven't used DPNs for years, but the place I buy needles didn't have 12-inch circulars, and I wanted to be able to knit on it before I went on holidays, but then I'm leaving in a week, so maybe I'll pick up some 12-inch circulars on holidays. We'll see. So that's where I'm at with that one. I really love it. My sister Melinda Knits and Sews is knitting along with me, and she has just split for the sleeves, which is super exciting. She also has kids. She has 3 kids and works. And yeah, I think that's part of it, is because I'm living in a country where I don't actually know many people. I don't really have the social life that goes along with normal things. Like, I don't think I would be getting as much knitting done if I was still living in Australia with the things that I would normally do in Australia. And I'm sure my time here will get busier and more full, but also at the moment I have young kids, so they go to bed at night and I'm housebound. And so I have chunks of time where I'm in the house, where I don't have people coming over, or if they do come over, I can usually knit while I chat with them. Yeah, so it's just a stage of life that I'm in at the moment. I'm enjoying the extra knitting time. I don't know how long that will last or continue for, but at the moment I'm grateful for it. I love Polish pottery. Polish pottery, I'm just going to show you that again. It's called Bolesławiec because it's made in a town called Bolesławiec. But it's just beautiful. It's a thicker pottery, but it's microwave proof, dishwasher proof, oven proof. Yes, I could put this cup in the oven. Amazing. So yeah, you can get oven dishes and everything out of Polish pottery. Alright, my last whip that I have to show you today, I started 2 weeks ago, and it's this one here. I actually have kept it in the basket. I mentioned on my last podcast that I had put it in a basket because it was convenient, but that I would move it to a project bag, and I never did. The project bag is still sitting on my sewing desk where it was last episode, and I've actually found the basket really convenient because I don't have to pull it in and out. I can just literally pick it up and knit. And my daughter has been trying to pick it up and knit as well. Actually, I'll make it. didn't bring a pen. Hang on a second. I'll make a note to put in a photo of my daughter with yarn. So both my kids love yarn. They love fabric, they love blankets, they love handmade things. I'm a very, very happy woman. But when I get to the end of a ball of yarn, sometimes if one of my kids is there, I'll let them pull it off. And my son, he will ask, can I pull some yarn off the ball? And I'll say yes, and he'll stand there and pull it off until I say that's enough, and then I'll just knit what he's pulled off. My daughter, who is, 14 months, she just pulls the yarn apart. And so it is an absolute mess. So I'll put a photo in here of her doing that with this yarn when I was, knitting this project. I find it's a nice way to get them involved and feel like they're having fun, and that mummy's not doing this instead of playing with them, but they're actually joining mummy and doing something. So it's a similar thing to, I put washing up on the line this morning, and my daughter helped me by passing me some things of washing and then by throwing them out on the floor and exploring the washing basket. It's a similar kind of thing. It's a way of getting them involved in what I'm doing. My son used to play with scraps on the floor while I sewed with scraps. It's what we do. Anyway, so this is my onion tea. I'm using Drops Bell Unicolor. It is a 53% cotton, 33% viscose, 14% linen, and I bought it from Lawieczka Pozmenteria here in Poland. It's in Lublin, so not local. It's about 2 hours away. I bought it online. I have used, I think I bought 9 balls, and I have used more. I want to say 4 completely. This is my 5th ball, but the pattern calls me to break yarn and join again a few times, and so there are times that I've done that with a new ball instead of starting with the old one again, because I suspected that I would, how do I put this? Because it says break yarn here and then join yarn here. So when it says join yarn, I've always started with a new ball of yarn. And I'm really glad I have, because sometimes I've used an entire ball of yarn where if I joined with the one that I already used some of, I would have had to have rejoined again. So it's kept my joinings to a minimum, but it means that I have a few little, where are you? Like a third of a ball of yarn, bits and pieces, which I will possibly add in later if I don't think I'm going to need to use a whole skein of yarn at some point. Anyway, this is my Anya tea. This is a pattern written by Comfort Zone Knits, which is a Polish designer, and the pattern is written in Polish and English, and I'm actually following the Polish instructions. I'm just seeing if I can find a photo for you. There you go. It is a free pattern on Ravelry, so if you're interested, head on over. Like I said, project page will be linked below that you can have a look. But this is what I've done so far. I actually think there's a knit along happening for this t-shirt for people to wear it to the Druda's Lot, the knitting festival in Torun in September. I'm not sure I'm going to have it done or blocked by then, even if I had it done, because we leave in a week. I'm going on holidays in a week, in 2 days. So I don't think it's going to be finished by then. If it's not, I don't know if I'll take it on holidays or not, but it has been really great. And I noticed I knit on it a lot when I was doing the back and forward and the short rows and the joining and all those bits, because I wanted to get to the easy knitting in the round bit. Now I'm knitting in the round, and most of it is just stockinette, no more purling or anything like that. I mean, there are some, obviously, yarn overs and things, but it is this should be simple and easy to knit and pick up. But I have been reaching for other projects, not because this is hard, just because I know it's easy. And so if I have energy, I want to knit something different. Like the the feet teeth socks that I knit in 3 days. I could have been knitting on this and worn it to Torren, but no, I needed to make socks for my son. So there isn't a deadline for this. It was a low key. If I make it for Torren and finish it in time, that would be great. It was so I could have a nice, relaxing, cool wearing summer top, which would be great for wearing right now. But I'm also noticing, because it's cotton, I don't know, it's a bit more grubby in the humidity. So it's cooler to sit on my lap, but I'm not reaching for it as much. So anyway, that is my last bit. Last time I showed you, it was just a tiny little bit at the top. So making progress. So yeah, that is it for my whips. I have only cast on one since the last podcast, and that is the one that I also finished since the last podcast. So I have one less whip than the last podcast, but I have worked on all of them quite regularly throughout the past couple of weeks. So there you go. I will quickly go into stash down stuff now. So I was gifted this book when I moved to Poland. I had pre-ordered it as a gift. I will link it down below. She's designing the 2023 one at the moment, which I think I will probably get because I've just found it so useful, so practical. I was not gifted it by the person who made it, just so you know. It was a goodbye gift from someone in Australia. But I've just found it so useful, so practical. You can keep track of how much you're knitting each day with little coloured in sections. You keep track of what projects you're doing, when you start, when you finish. You have goals for the month, and then you keep track of different stats down the bottom as well. Finished objects, unfinished objects, and total grams used. But then at the back there's room for yarn stash, for finished projects, and then some like yearly summary stuff as well. And I absolutely love it. I'm just enjoying it so much. I should be figuring that out. Anyway, so I will almost definitely get it again next year. But one of the things that it has had the opportunity for, because you track stash at the back and you track what you buy for stash at the back, and then every month it has finished objects, unfinished objects, and total grams used for that month. But then it has, for January, yarn stash coming into the year, how much grams you used for stash, how much you bought and left in stash. So it is doing it by grams, not by meters, which I just find really easy because I can just weigh and go. And it means that when I am keeping track here, it has a little grams used for finished objects as well. So I can just pop it in there and at the end of the month add it up, put it down the bottom. So I find it just a very simple, easy way to do it. I'm reaching for the book anyway to keep track of my projects, so doing that little thing every month isn't that difficult. And because every month has a project list, I have to then write at the beginning of every month that list, copy it over to the next month. But even that is helpful because it means that I'm not then for the whole month looking, so this will be September, I'm not looking at the entire list of everything I've done since the beginning of the year. I only am looking at what I've got on my needles right now. And it only has room for 5, 10, 15 projects. Which means if I go into the month with 10 projects, I can only cast on 5. No, that's not true. But there have been times when I've looked at it and gone, I'm running out of space. and it's not been a pressure point for me. It's not like I want to cast on all these things. It's actually been more of a mindfulness thing of, I actually have a lot of things on the needles, or I finished a lot of projects this month, but what else do I have that I'm already working on that I can spend some time on? And I honestly think if it wasn't for this book, this blanket would not have gotten to the point that it's in, because every month I rewrite that project in this book, and every month I look at it and go, I should probably do something about that. And I did. There you go. So I love it. But one of the things, like I mentioned earlier, is stash down. At the beginning of this year, I went, yes, stash down, sounds great, let's do it. And I counted up all my yarn that I had with me at the beginning of this year, and it was 16.898 kilograms. That's a lot of yarn. A lot of yarn. Some of it is, like these ones, 200 gram balls, and there'd be a kilo, if not more, in this. So if you think about it as, 16 blankets worth or something, sure. But when you think about, a lot of them are actually 100 gram sock skeins. I had included scraps in that, so I was actually counting, anything bigger than 10 grams, I think I was counting in that 16 kilograms. And it was a lot. And I had them all individually itemized, and then as I finished something, I'd cross it off. It was a lot. And so I had a couple months of not buying anything, but then I wanted to make projects that I didn't have yarn for, like this. And so I ended up buying yarn for specific projects, and that bumped it up. So that's why I say it's not really a stash down, because since the beginning of the year, I have increased by 761 grams what I have in my stash. Now, there are a couple of things with that. I have stopped counting scraps as stash, so I took scraps out of my stash because it was really hard if I'm doing a scrappy blanket like this one to then figure out exactly which 7 gram or 10 gram or 20 gram skein I'd used in that, because they were actually being kept in this basket. They weren't being kept with my stash. And so I finally just went, if I'm making scrappy projects, it doesn't count towards what I'm using. So the Monster Feet Teeth socks, only the red part will actually count to what I've been using, because that was stash, not scraps. Everything else is scraps, and therefore doesn't count. So I actually need to figure out how much of the red I used, because I put that in wrong. Anyway, so that's part of it, is I wanted to be aware of what I had and what I was buying and knit with what I've got. But I also want to make the projects that I want to make, and if I don't have yarn for projects, then I'm happy to buy yarn for projects. I don't have much DK weight yarn. Most of it is fingering, and most of it I have bought for socks. So it means when I want to make sweaters, I actually don't have many options, and some of the ones that I have for specific projects that I just haven't cast on yet. So all that to say, I haven't used more stash than I've accumulated this year, but I have used 5 kilograms, 5.756 kilograms of yarn this year, which means I've also bought 6 kilograms of yarn this year. But that's a lot of knitting. That is like one worsted weight jumper. No, that's not even counted in that. My worsted weight jumper was 1,100 grams, 1.1 kilos, and that's not included in that because that was this month. So as of the 1st of August, I had used 5.756 kilograms. Once I include August, the first podcast in September when I'm coming to talk to you, it'll be in the negative. No, it won't. No, it won't. But I will have used another 600 grams, another kilogram worth of yarn. Anyway, so that's where I'm at. I am loving tracking it. I have been doing really well. I haven't actually bought much yarn for the past while. But the other thing that I have to figure out is I've started dyeing yarn, and so I haven't actually added the yarn that I've dyed into that total. And so I need to either decide whether I'm just going to add the yarn that I dye into the total when it's dyed and I intend to keep it, or what. I don't know. I'm not planning to give away much of my dyed yarn, so maybe I should just do that. Anyway, so that's where I'm at with my stash stuff. It has definitely helped me be more mindful, both in knitting what I'm making, like finishing what I'm starting, and also in terms of buying yarn. But the reason I say that it won't be in the negative, it won't be used more than I have bought when I see you next time, is because I'm going to a knitting festival and I'm planning to buy a lot of yarn. And this will be my first chance for in-person shopping at a yarn store. I want to say for about 2 years, maybe more. It's been a long time. So I'm very excited, and I have projects, and I'm trying to buy full projects, not just buy random skeins of yarn, because I have random skeins of yarn. But yeah, I'm doing that. It's going to be fun. I'm very excited. So that is the 3rd of September in Torun. I will be there with my friend from Poland, Sarah. She is the one that I have taught to knit. Well, reminded her how to knit. She learned as a kid. But she's coming with me, and then my friend Rosie from Australia is flying over to visit us, and it just happened to be at the same time as the knitting festival in Torun, so she's coming as well. So we're going to have a great time knitting and buying precious yarn. I'm really excited. Yeah, I might see if I can take some video of the festival. I don't know what it'll be like. I don't really know what to expect. I've never been to a knitting festival in Poland before. So I'll see if I can take some footage and show you here. But that is coming up and I'm really excited. So that'll affect stash stuff, definitely. The other thing, so I don't have acquisitions per se. I have the needles that are coming today, but obviously I don't have them to show you. But I did get shelves for my knitting, my sewing area. If you're on Instagram, you may have seen them. But I'm just going to put a quick video in here because, as you can see, I'm not in my sewing area today. My husband he's working on his thesis and he wanted to use the upstairs computer today, not the downstairs one. So I came into the study to record. So I will insert here a clip of my upstairs sewing area and I'll see you in a second. So this is my space. This is where I have to sew. This is not a dedicated room. This is part of a larger room. So if I pan this way, there is definitely mess. But this is this is the kids' play area, or one of them. And then the other way you get my husband's desk area as well. So this is a room that we all use and we all use differently, but we can all use it at the same time. And so it works really well for allowing me to get some sewing done. And key to that is having a dedicated cutting table, because I can stand right here and cut overlooking my kids playing in the play section. And that, just allows me to get some work done without having to cut everything downstairs to the dining room table, or make sure the dining room table doesn't have food on it. Having a dedicated sewing space helps a lot. So I'll just give you a quick run through of this section. Down here is my clothing material. Traditionally I've been a huge quilter and done a bit of clothing on the side. Since I had kids, clothing has taken over a bit more, and even since moving to Poland, where I don't know what clothes shops come with clothes that I wear, style or size, making my own clothes has been really helpful for getting the things that I need in a timely fashion without having to go to multiple shops and try things on with toddlers. Yay! So yeah, I have clothing fabric down here, and then this is just a junk shelf that I need to clear up. My sewing machine and overlocker I bought when I moved to Poland. Sewing machine was my 30th birthday present, but it took me a while to get it because I didn't have a permanent home. So moving here and getting my sewing machine was very exciting. But what is new, these shelves I've had for a month or two for thread, which has been, again, very helpful. But what is new at the moment is these two shelves here and the pegboard. And what it's done is it's just basically cleared up here because all of these pots used to be along here, and like really it was infringing on the cutting mat. Now I have a little bit of extra room beyond the cutting mat, which is brilliant. These pots are, I think a couple of them are empty. One of them has extra things for the pegboard. One has scraps. One has rubbish. I do have a rubbish bin down here, but this one the kids can get to, so I try not to put anything too small down there. And then the top shelf is more ornamental for things that I like. The suitcase, it was a present, but I bought it in Australia, in Marysville, in the post office there. The post office has the cutest gifts in Marysville. So if you're in Victoria and want to go for a drive up the mountain, go up to Marysville, check out the post office. Absolutely love their stuff. And then, pegboard, having everything lifted off the table. I've got scissors and everything out of reach of the kids. My son could totally climb up onto the shelf and pull them down, but my daughter can't yet, and my son knows better. So we'll get there. And the yarn at the top is, because it's pretty, let's be honest. I didn't have as much to put on the pegboard as I expected. I thought I might have maybe a third of that yarn up there, but when I realised I didn't have as much to put up there at this point as I expected, I put some yarn up there, and I just love the way it looks to kind of frame the area with the colours up here and the colours down here, kind of tying it all together. So this is my sewing area. I don't generally knit up here. I do just use it for sewing, so the yarn is just for prettiness. But I'm not recording up here today because my husband is going to be doing his work right here. So I'm going to record back in the study with the boring background, sorry. But I wanted to share with you my new sewing space since I was talking about it last podcast about how I was getting new shelves, and I got them. Yay! And right here, let's just move closer for a sec. Right here is my little Incrediwoman Elastigirl. She used to sit on my old sewing machine, and so I kept her. So there you go. That's my new pegboard. Shelves. I really do love this space, and I really do want to come up and sew. The next thing that I want to do is clear out this section, this shelf here, because that has just half-finished projects that are in planning, all sorts of stuff, but not in a place that I can just pull it out and work on it. So I want to clear that out, put some storage for patterns, because at the moment all of my patterns are just sitting in piles back here. There's some more under there. So I want to have a folder or something that I can just pull my patterns in, so I know what's what. And these drawers are actually empty because my daughter can reach them and I don't know what to put into them. Yay. So there you go, my updated, not new, updated sewing space in the middle of a family room. All right, so that was my sewing area. I love it. Like I said, I'm very much looking forward to finishing organising it and having a practical space to use. But that's it for acquisitions. I have not bought any yarn since the last podcast. I did consider it a few times, but I held out because I knew that I was going to this knitting festival. Druce's lot. And I'm hoping to meet up with some other Polish knitters that I have met online at the festival as well. It'll be interesting. It's much easier to talk with someone through messages when you can check what you're saying and what you're writing than in person when you're like, I didn't understand what you just said, but I also can't just check. So we'll see how that goes. One of the benefits for me of not having many patterns published in Polish is that most Polish knitters will understand at least some English. It's not great for the Polish knitters though. But I am learning Polish, they're learning English, we'll be able to talk, at least some. That is the plan. And then the final thing is holidays. I am going on a holidays after the knitting festival. So taking a couple of weeks off with my family, we're going to, just stop and rest. So there won't be a podcast in 2 weeks. I'm actually recording today because I knew this was the last chance to record for a while. Next Tuesday, Rosie will be here. She arrives on Monday. Yay! And so we're going to actually have a sewing morning, a knitting morning next Tuesday morning because that's what we used to do in Australia when we saw each other. And then we'll dye some wool on Wednesday, and then Thursday we will head to Krakow so I can show her Krakow with my family, of course, as well. And then on Friday we'll travel up to Torun, have the knitting festival Saturday, travel to our holiday place on Sunday, and start our holiday properly on Monday. So it's going to be a very busy, crazy full week, but it's going to be fun. I'm very excited to show one of my really good friends Poland, or at least my little area of Poland, and some areas of Poland that I've never seen before. It'd be good to see her, to get some knitting time with her. She is my knitting friend. Like, we did not know each other aside from craft sewing knitting mornings. Very excited. But yeah, so that means we'll be on holidays for a couple of weeks, and it'll be, let me just think of dates. It'll be the end of September before I would have a chance to record again, but I actually don't know if I'll be able to record the first Tuesday that we're at home, or if I'll need to keep doing unpacking and other things and have to wait another week after that. So I will see you in a while. I'm not going to upload anything while I'm on holidays in terms of blogs. I will possibly, I'll probably put stuff on Instagram in terms of what I'm sewing and what I'm seeing. So if you are interested in keeping up with that stuff, follow me on Instagram, Kirsty Knits and Sews. It is linked below. But yeah, I won't be putting anything on YouTube for about a month. So subscribe so that when the next episode goes up, you'll know it. And yeah, I will see you soon. I'm really excited. Alright, thank you so much for coming. I'm going to wrap it up here. Thank you for knitting and joining me. I hope you had a cup of tea or your hot beverage of choice to drink while we chatted.